Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. It's early in the day and it's going to be one of those days where it's just going to be dull and it's probably going to rain. So saves my electricity bill basically because I don't need all the big fans on. You've got to find a bright side somehow, haven't you? Anyway, this is just a look round really. I got a few points I'd like to sort of say, but yeah, it's just one of those look rounds, yeah. It's been a bit intense lately, and looking at some of the videos over the last short, back in time a bit, it might sound all doom and gloom as well. I can assure you it's not. But I do believe that if I've got a problem on a plant and I can talk about it and say why I think it's happened and what I'm going to do about it, there's a learning thing there. So I'm quite happy to do that, but it's like I've said, because I've got a problem with these two plants, the other 200 are okay. In the main, I've still got some dodgy ones in here in amongst the jungle, the sea of green. But, stuff's still going on. There's things looking good. It's not all doom and gloom at all. And quite honestly, these Phalaenopsis this year are shining, because these are all my spikes this time, as opposed to the bought-in ones. I mean, this Nobly hybrid's doing well. Spring Dreamer pollen. My Latoria's opened, and if everybody else's videos and words are to anything to go by, they're going to be there quite a while. They are most welcome. And this little Dendrobium was bought, with a single flower open, one nearly open, and a bud just about to open. I don't know how long that one's going to last. We shall see. But, there's there's stuff going on. There's stuff to look at. The Arengus up here, the first spike's fading now, so I can now say that the flowers don't last a long time. But, I mean, I've got 2 spikes full of buds coming, and the fragrance on that after it gets dark is just worth having a plant for that, even though the spikes are incredibly slow to grow. But, yeah, this is the shorter, weaker spike. The other 2 are coming on nicely, so things are coming on. Another thing I wanted to mention is something that's talked about in many different ways, but it's called hybrid vigor. It can be interpreted in many ways, but quite honestly, when somebody goes to all the trouble of, looking at the parentage of one hybrid and the parentage of another and how it grows, how big the blooms are, and they decide to make a new hybrid, there's an awful lot of planning and thought goes into that to get something better. That's the whole idea of the hybridization programs, is to get something bigger, stronger, healthier, more vigorous, with something pretty special as far as the blooming is concerned. There's a lot of work and effort and time that goes into that, and we end up with the results. It's good stuff. I mean, this is Peter Comp. Now, this spike has still got some buds to come. The first bloom that opened is going over. These are not really long-lasting blooms, but I mean, as a plant, it's got 2 other spikes coming up in the jungle up here. There's another one there, and I can't get at the other one without moving all the plants. But that's a vigorous grower. It does well. You've got a job to put that one down. Here's another one. Miltonia Sunset. Yeah, lovely coloured blooms. 2 stages. You get the intense colours when they first open, and then you get the pastel colours as they fade. But it's a vigorous grower. Try stopping that one. I mean, that's got another spike coming up the back, so as this one progresses and gradually the blooms die off, I've got another one coming, so that's good. Here's another vigorous one. Try stopping this one. Shelob Tolkien. This just keeps going. It's unstoppable. It pushes out new growths frequently. And this is another of the Oncidium type intergenerics, although this one, strictly speaking, is Miltassia. So in theory, that is mainly Brassia. You can tell by the shape of the blooms. And it's got some milt in there, which, because they've stuck it on the front, well, what is it? Miltonia? Miltoniopsis? But it's a hybrid at the end of the day. And it's vigorous. So whoever decided to cross these 2, got a result. Good one. So, hybrid vigor. Now, on reflection, that up the back there is a first time bloomer. And it's a wildcat. That's wildcat rainbow. Yeah? And I've always said I like my wildcats. Well, you know what? I don't like that one that much. So as it's a pretty good plant, and I need to make room, that can go on the list of possibly selling on. You know, somebody else might think that's the best bloom they've ever seen, and they'd love it. So, you know, that's one that can probably go and make some space. So, you know, some people may say that's gorgeous. Well, it doesn't float my boat, I'm afraid. So it's got a bit too much white on it. I'll show you what I mean, because Bobcat's open. This is another wildcat. Now, to me, that bloom is stunning. It's the camera won't pick it up, but that is the deepest velvety red with lovely little gold tips all around the edges. You know, that's going nowhere. So, you know, sometimes you have to sort of rationalise when you're getting a bit short on the old space and think, well, if I haven't got room for everything, which are my least favourites that somebody else might enjoy? So there's some of that going on. But that's the first time I've ever seen that, a Restrepia with 3 blooms that close together. I mean, there's some others that have gone over, but yeah, that's what Restrepias do. They come and go. I mean, my favourite one is that tiny little yellow one, which without the tripod, you can't see the colours on that. But, you know, this one's got a couple of blooms on. If the drowning over the last couple of days hasn't set it back. Oh, it'll dry off. It's still summertime. And this, the blooms are some of my favourite Phalaenopsis blooms. But it's not my favourite plant. It takes up an awful lot of space, and it doesn't have a mass blooming. It's not that type of Phalaenopsis. It's quite close to the species. In fact, I think it's a primary cross. Can't be bothered to go and look it up, but yeah, I mean, that's sweet memory. Is it? Yeah, I think so. Can't even bother to get the tag out this time of day. But the blooms are gorgeous and they are fragrant. But you only ever get a couple at a time, you know. I think it'll extend. It looks like that spike may move on and produce a couple more. But that's an awful lot of spike for a couple of blooms stuck on the end. You know, in comparison. That's what I call a Phalaenopsis spike. Now, I know some people like their Phalaenopsis species, but they tend to be tiny, and they don't tend to have very many at once. So for me, the Phalaenopsis hybrids are a better bet. You know, you get a good spike with many blooms on. So, you know, it's you take your choices. What else is lurking while I scan round? Oh, that's opening. Opening, not open, unfortunately, so I don't know how much of the colours on this I can show. I'll have to hold it up. But this is Sturbic. Yeah? Lovely patterning, beautiful red lip when it opens properly, with markings, yeah, and lovely waxy sturdy blooms. So that's a recovering plant. That has been on the iffy plant list for some time, but the latest growth doesn't look too bad. I find that with some orchids there is something about a plant that's actually in bloom, and there's some sort of thing going on within the plant that actually says, I'm blooming at the moment, so I'm not doing new growths. And yet as soon as the spike comes off, you'll see the new growths come out. Can't say it's a hard and fast rule, but I've certainly got some that I can say that in my experience, that's what happens. Cattleyas seem to be that way inclined. And yet some Cattleyas are chucking out new growths and old ones are blooming at the same time. So it's not a rule as such, but it seems to be a bit of a trend. And this is a coming soon, and it's a coming soon that I can't flipping wait for. This is that dirty Odontoglossum plant, which most people would either start treating or throw away, but that's how it is. And it's Devosiana, and it was once an Odontoglossum. Actually, I think it was an Odontada or something. Whatever it is, and it's probably changed its name a dozen times since then, that spike is coming on. I haven't got a clue what this is going to look like, but looking at the size of the buds, the blooms are going to be small, but it hopefully makes up for them with the numbers. I mean, this was in spike when I got it, and the little branches were just starting to show. So it's pushing on. Coming soon. That can go in the coming soon category. Oof! That's if I don't break it off moving the plant around. Okay, so yeah, just a quick look round, and you know, it's all very well with the species, but you know, they can be troublesome. If you want nice, easy life, vigorous plants, you know, good blooms that have been well formed and thought out, you know, the hybrids are a good bet. Always. You know, they seem to work, and you do get an oddity in amongst them. The Nellie Isla always springs to mind. Somebody produced a cross that has beautiful blooms, and there's quite a few named varieties of that. There's an orange one, there's the original, there's a redder one, there's the one that I've got that's all red, and most of the patterning's been taken away, you know, obviously a process, but whatever. You know, that's not a strong grower, and it's a fussy one. So yes, it's a hybrid, and it should have hybrid vigour, and yes, it has, but you've got to get it right. You've got to do your bit for that one, or it'll not play ball, shall we say. That's about it, I think. That'll do for today. Quick look through the sea. Vandas. The big blue is still going strong. Those blooms are huge. I am well pleased with that. That spike is considerably and noticeably better than last year's. Last time was its first bloom, and this year the spike has a couple more flowers, but I reckon they're a lot bigger and the colour intensity is far, far better. I can't say definitively why that is, but I think it might have something to do with the new fertiliser I'm using this year. The big white one up there is going over now. Yeah, as soon as the purple tinging starts to go, the lips start to fade, and I took one bloom off yesterday because it flopped. You can see that's on its way out. The next time I pick that plant up, that spike can probably come off. Yeah, get the plant going again. Maybe we'll get another one this year. That's another point. The season is getting on now. I don't want to write it off yet. We've still got a month of good growing. We've still got September. Once we start getting into October in the UK, your growing season is just slowing up. I'll be thinking about changing my fertiliser a bit at that time, getting ready for the UK winter. Well, there's some countries people are growing orchids where they don't care whether it's winter or summer. Everything lives outside and it just carries on, you know. But I have to worry about those things. Well, minor worry, I suppose. Oh, I forgot the other Vanda. I have to get that one down because it's facing backwards. This is the one that has the orange flowers on. The two spikes are coming on well. They're going to have a lot of blooms on, and both at the same time. That is going to look good. Pleased with that. That just grows well for me. That's one my daughter got me, and it just does well. Last year it was in bloom when I got it, and it bloomed twice more, including a double spike like that. This year it's already bloomed once with a single spike. That's its second blooming coming soon. So, yeah. All doing okay. I'm not buried in problems. There's some good stuff going on, you know. And as I went round studying the plants for reasons mentioned in previous videos and as a consequence of certain developments depending on the media, some changes in practices, only minor, but you know, they should do some good. I was looking at plants and recalling blooms in my mind and thinking, do I really need that one? So I've now got probably heading up towards double figures of plants that are no longer required. I've enjoyed them, but I'd like to make some space for some plants to grow bigger and have more, you know, I mean, if you look at this lot, they're a bit crowded, aren't they? They're a bit squashed up, which means parts of the plants are not getting perhaps as much light as they deserve because they're buried in amongst the shade of other leaves hanging over the top of them. It's the same with this sea of green over here. Now that's actually slightly deliberate. That flipping great tenuifolia up there. See, that's on the list. That doesn't bloom that well for me. Look at the space it's taking up. So I think that one's probably going to end up getting sold on. I've got another piece of that in a pot, which is growing on, so I wouldn't lose the plant. But quite honestly, it's one of those plants, if that mount and the equivalent in the pot died tomorrow, it wouldn't be the end of my orchid world. It's not my favourite. It just isn't. It doesn't float my boat. Whereas there are some I would be quite upset to lose, And those are the ones I want to concentrate on. It's the favourites. Let's get some good favourites in here. And any of the also rans, somebody else can get some enjoyment out of that. Clear some space out, make the airflow around the plants a bit better. Let the light get through to all the leaves, not just the ones trying to stick out the top. And get a bit of order in here from what can look a bit chaotic at times. I mean, these are quite spaced out down here. That shelf up the back there, there's only 4 plants on it. One of them's too tall, so the leaves are touching the shelf above. But not the new growth, that's the older leaves, so I'm not worried about that. But they're all lined up next to the glass. They all get reasonably even light, but they don't get a lot from above, do they? Not with that lot sat above them. And then this shelf, most of the ones on here, except for the ones in the far corner, that's the other tenuifolia there, that's up against the glass, they do need light. And the 2 in the corner are dendrobiums, they need light, so they've got it coming in from both sides. Not much from above, but some, because the shelf immediately above those is thin. So there is some light coming all round there. And the rest of them, quite honestly, are odontoglossums, they don't need highlight, and Nellie Isla there. Ugh. Just as a matter of interest. Anybody who's ever tried a Nellie Isla probably knows what I mean. They are a little bit fussy. But my 2 new growths are coming on nicely. Slowly, but nicely. They still haven't started pushing out their new roots yet. So obviously that's, on this particular plant, it's one of those where the new growths need to be quite mature and then the new roots come out. Knowing these things is quite handy, because it saves the worry. So yeah. Bit of a clear out. This shelf's not getting cleared out. This is my Cattleya types with a couple of exceptions. There's a Epidendrum cane type up there. This is a Prosthetia green hornet. So there's a couple of exceptions up there. There's another Prosthetia in there somewhere, but it's buried at the moment. Not getting that out. These are my not doing so good Cattleyas. This is the one that got singed, the apple blossom, but it's got good new growth coming on it. Let's be sensible, shall we, and grow at the base so that our roots can get in the media. No, let's not be sensible and grow halfway up. But the roots will get in there. It's got more than enough. This is an iffy plant, and I'm beginning to think, is it really worth the trouble? Unfortunately, it is. The blooms are gorgeous, but it has got a new growth, and the new roots are not that good, but it's not dead yet. And the other 2 ones up here that look awful are that one back there and that one there. And those are the 2 pieces that I've had lying around on shelves. I've tried them in moss, I've tried all sorts of things to get those flipping bits to grow. This is their last chance, and one of them is growing. Yeah, that one got potted with the sign of a new growth and signs of new roots. Well, the new growth is pushing on, and so are the roots. So that piece has made it. Whether the other piece will or not, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, so this watering session, because of the close inspection required, has had some thoughts put into it. There are some plants that are now on the list to go. No time scales, but at some point down the line, there are plants in here that are just not my favourites, taking up room. So we're going to have a rationalise. I did it last year, and some of that spilled over into the start of this year. But that, quite honestly, was after the rash of fusarium that I got, that until I really understood what was going on and the symptoms and what to look for, I didn't really know how bad it was. And eventually I found out that my plants had come from 2 sources, and those were the ones that had the fusarium. So once I found that out and I joined the dots up, I could pay particular attention to every single plant that had come from those two suppliers. One of the suppliers I only got 3 plants from, and one died quite quickly. The other 2 are recovering quite nicely. But the other supplier was mainly Cattleyas and some Oncidium intergenerics and things like that. That whole set had to be classed as iffy until proven otherwise. And I'd already lost quite a few of them and didn't know why. Because I didn't know about all that stuff then. Sometimes I wish I'd never found out. But it's better to know and be able to deal with things than to just bury your head in the sand. And, that stuff's out there whether we like it or not. So every time you bring a new orchid in, you have the potential. Yeah, so keep your eye on things. Never get complacent. Anyway, just to sort of look round. I mean, this is a little sad. My Desa's starting to go over. Well, nothing lasts forever, and they've lasted far, far longer than I ever expected them to. Now all I've got to do is get them to do it again next year. I have a serious pot full of plants here, and they've got to be unpotted and separated out, and I'll probably end up with at least 2, maybe 3 potfuls. And hopefully some of them will make it. But these things are incredibly susceptible to rot at the base of the plant immediately after transplanting. They have to be done because there's elements. This, the sort of corm or whatever you want to call it at the base of the plant that this is on and that this is on is going to die because it's bloomed. And if it's left in the pot, it'll rot. So it's got to come out. Once they've bloomed, they need repotting. I'm told by people who grow Desas, this is what you need to do. You need to get those old corms out. But while this has been flowering, that larger corm, big enough to flower, has been producing lots of new ones all around the edge. And those need to be gently broken off and potted up separately to grow on and do this again. So I've got to do that in the autumn. But I am going to get help. Get help from an expert. If there's one around and you can get at them, well, use them. That's what they're there for. And they love it. People love passing on their knowledge and being helpful. Well, most do. Anyway, that'll do for this one. It's just a quick look round and just the point that not all is doom and gloom, even though it might seem like it sometimes. It's not. I would say that the majority of the things in here are doing very well, thank you very much. Some aren't doing as well as they should be, and I'm dealing with it. And then there's a few that have got problems that I just happen to have been showing lately. My new moss is here. That means I can attack those at the back. These Tolumnias, the ones on that back rack there, are pulling on. They are showing signs of life again, because I thought I'd lost I did lose quite a few Tolumnias. That was scale, basically. But they're coming on. They're still a bit dehydrated in most cases. They need moss round the base to help them. Well, I've got the moss now, so I can get on with that. That big dendrobium I did in the last week or so, I suppose, that got bare rooted. That needs some moss round it. It needs some help. Yeah, it hasn't got much of the growing season left, and it lost its root tip, so it needs some help. I need to keep that one hydrated. And as a consequence, that one might not get rested this year. I might forego a mass blooming and just get a trickle or even none. But I don't want to lose the plant. Plant's more important. Yeah? And we'll be coming on to that towards the end of October. What am I going to do with my resting type dendrobiums? You're in for a shock. But that's not yet. That's for later. That's a tease. Okay. See you again. Thanks for watching and dropping by and all that sort of stuff. And see you next time.